Hello, and welcome to Khyber Shards, where there are no random tables and polymorph doesn't work. I am your Dungeon Master, Philip. Welcome. This is a new show produced by the Geek Pantheon. If you have listened to Eberron Renewed or The Knowledge Check or watched any of Eric's many YouTube videos on all things D&D, then you're familiar with some of our content. If not, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. This is going to be an actual play series set in Eberron using the 5th edition rule set of Dungeons and Dragons. The premise here, if you've listened to Eberron Renewed, you know that Eric does a whole bunch of cool editing work and great stuff with that, and I'm not going to make him do any of that with this show. It's going to be like you are watching us play D&D just as buddies. So that's how this is it's gonna be a little more Eberron Renewed Unplugged-esque, I guess. So that is the basic idea here. So I'm gonna go ahead and let our cast introduce themselves and a little bit about their characters, and then we will get into our session 0, where we will learn a little more about their characters, how they became to be an adventuring party of sorts, and perhaps learn a little bit about what they think of each other and a little bit about what they think of themselves, ideally, as we go. So, Eric, start us off.
Yeah, I am Eric, and I'm going to be playing Unidavari Smith, but he just goes by Ari, and he is a half-elf Great Old One's warlock. And his aberrant dragon mark has always given him the ability to influence the minds of others, typically using it to get out of sticky situations and ensure that everybody around him treats him as a friend. But those powers have started to shift a little bit in recent times to be more powerful and kind of start talking back, which he's unsettled by. But yeah, so that is Ari.
Cool. Colin?
Hi, I'm Colin. On the internets, I am also sorry, BTR. I am playing Wogharad, a half-orc, half-human barbarian. My mark grants me pyrokinesis abilities. I go by the single name, having lost my tribe and been cast out early on at a young age. And so there's a lot of identity issues, which is going to influence my intimacy within the group. I'm also the new player to the world of D&D, so that's the end of my intro because Eric knows way more about this stuff than me.
You have actually played 5th edition one more time than I have. So, to be fair.
Yep. But we kind of made that up as we went along. So this is going to be my first full-fledged D&D campaign.
All right. R.A.
Howdy, I am R.A. I am playing a character known as Esri, and more reluctantly, Esri Nosheran. He is a Kalishtar druid, and he doesn't really strongly identify with either of those things, if that makes sense, with the cultural aspects of those things. Those are just things that he's sort of stuck with. His aberrant mark gives him a close connection to nature, but he has trended to the darker or more transitional side of nature. So the parasitical, the poison, the transition from life to death, the middle state, or the sort of transitional state of undeath when that occurs. So more about the decay and perhaps the rebirth aspects of D&D nature.
And Casey.
My name is Casey, and I will be playing Shade. She is a shifter ranger, and her mark is tied to weather, but I'm playing the mark as almost a metaphorical or a physical reaction to her emotional state. So she can push and pull people physically based on how she's feeling.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. I also want to introduce a house rule that we're going to try out. So a lot of systems, I've gotten to play a lot of systems other than D&D, and a lot of systems have a mechanic that D&D doesn't really have that will allow you to push yourself to gain a little more, effort into a check. This is something you see in Genesis, where you can take some strain to take an extra maneuver, or in if you've played any of the Forged in the Dark games, they have a setting that is a mechanic literally called push, where you take a little extra stress to improve your chances on something. So we're going to try that out, and it may go through some different forms because I've never tried this out before. So it may go through some different forms as we play, but we're going to try it out in the simplest form that I've come up with to start with, and see how we like it. So you all have the option, whenever you make a check, you can attempt to push yourself. And what this means is that you can gain advantage on that check. You can roll again. So you can re-roll a failed check. However, this exerts yourself a little bit more. And so you are going to take some damage. We're going to think about our hit points not as how many times I can safely be hit by a sword, because that is 1. Actually, I said safely, so that's 0. You can be hit by a sword safely 0 times. And more of endurance and your ability to keep going. So you will, when you choose to push yourself, you will take damage equal to your proficiency bonus. So since we're starting at level 1, that's just 2, but it will scale a little bit up to 5. So as you gain more hit points, you will be able to safely do that more often. So that is an option everyone has anytime they make a check. And yeah, so we'll see how that works and whether we like it as we go along, and maybe make some adjustments if it doesn't seem to be achieving what I want it to.
Is that a one time per check?
Yes, you can't just keep rolling. For now, I'm going to say that. That might be interesting because there is a cost, so who knows? But
I'm literally going to do this if it kills me.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's a plausible thing. So we'll see.
And as Philip knows, being my longtime GM now, I will have my characters do something that until it kills them occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that has happened. I think that was a failure of creativity on my part, partly. But yeah, that did happen. Anyway, so I've gotten to play with all of these guys a few times. Certainly I played with Eric and Casey and RA for a long time. Colin I've only gotten to play with for a few times, but have known for a long time. And we'll probably try to do some shorter videos where I'll introduce each member more individually, and we can talk a little bit about their experience with role-playing and that kind of thing later maybe. But for now, we're going to let those introductions stand, and we're going to dive into our game. So we're going to be running session 0 sort of in character. The players will probably jump in and out of character. As any of you who have played D&D before know, you really don't know a character very well when you start playing them, and you learn a lot of things about that character by playing them. And so while, as the campaign progresses, we'll probably see a lot more carefulness about in-character stuff and metagaming and table talk and that kind of thing. We're not going to worry about that very much, because this is intended to be a let's get to know who these characters are a little bit kind of session. But we are going to have a sort of in-game, in-world reality to it. So our scene opens. We're in a large facility. In fact, you know that you are deep in the bowels of the Citadel of the 12, floating above the city of Korth in the nation of Karnath. This is a joint venture by all of the houses, by the powerful dragon-marked houses, to establish a place where they can meet together and deal with their common interests. It is The year. Oof. This is fun. Anyway, sorry. Let me try that again. The war's been going on for a long time, as you all know, all of your lives, for all of you, and for as long as all but the most long-lived races might live in this world. Not long ago, you all learned terrible news of an event that is becoming known as the Morning. In the midst of an enormous battle in the central Corvarian nation of Khyber, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Internet, just be cool with it. An enormous arcane catastrophe has taken place and swallowed the entire nation of Khyber as it exists now. Most Kyrans, as far as we can tell, were killed. Most anyone in Khyber, as far as we can tell, were killed. And this has really thrown the war into a state of flux. All the nations are sort of paused, trying to figure out what exactly happened. The main assumption, and probably your own assumption, is that some sort of super weapon has been deployed, and everyone is sort of angling to try and figure out who deployed it so that we can know what is happening. The most recent rumors you've heard or picked up from newspapers are of a peace conference being considered to discuss at least temporary cessation of hostilities until whatever the situation has been worked out. But that really hasn't affected your life. Some time ago, perhaps at different times for each of you, you joined or were brought into, perhaps, a program called the Black Wheel Program. This is another joint venture of the houses to find something useful to do with those cursed with an aberrant dragon mark. All of you have borne an aberrant dragon mark for a while now, probably manifested sometime around the time that you reached adulthood or hit puberty, and probably in a moment of stress, which we'll explore here in a minute. But that almost certainly changed your lives in some pretty specific ways. So let's start by exploring that. We're in a training room. You are all engaged in combat exercises using your marks as well as any other natural or magical talents that you have to fight animated training dummies that are running around the room on a pre-programmed system. You're equipped with real weapons, but the room has been enchanted so that the spells you cast and the weapons you wield are incapable of doing any permanent harm, thus preventing any serious accidents should you make a mistake or get a little reckless with a large area spell or something like that. So, looking around as we see your characters battling against these training dummies, we find ourselves focusing in on our half-elf warlock. And Eric, what do we see when we look at Ari?
So Ari at this point is 18 and black hair, just the beginnings of a beard. Just he's trying real hard. But yeah, Ari is not the biggest person. In fact, he's pretty skinny, not large muscles. Looks like he wouldn't really belong in a program like this. And in fact, the animated dummy that he is going up against is really taking him to task because and Ari looks frustrated by all of this. His mark, when he attempts to use it, you can see it glow faintly underneath his hair. So it's kind of on the back part of his scalp, and yeah, that's what you see. A frustrated half elf.
All right. So the thing we would see in Ari's body language is a certain degree of frustration with his current predicament here, with the fact that this thing is beating him.
Yes.
So is that driven by, he feels like, is he embarrassed that it's beating him when he looks around and sees others perhaps performing better? Is he frustrated at his own, just internally at his own inability? What drives that frustration in Ari?
It's the fact that, like, by putting him up against, he would say these dummies are dummies and they don't have a mind, so you have taken away most of my skill set because I can't do anything to them that plays into, so I'll be much better in the field.
So back at the back of the room, there's a house Deneth soldier watching, observing, and frequently critiquing. And as Ari is pressed back into a corner by the training dummy, he sort of calls out, "What are you going to do when they send an undead against you?" And at this point, someone intervenes in Ari's predicament and takes down the dummy. Who does that? All right. Casey, who do we see take down this dummy?
Shade is a shifter that has a little bit of Fox's features. So she has fox ears coming out here. She's got a little bit of a flat nose and sort of amber golden eyes that are just a little too big and too wide from what you would typically expect. Player question here. Yeah. Shifters hit puberty at a younger age, right? They have a shorter lifespan.
I don't, off the top of my head, know the answer to that.
I have not played a shifter before, so this is definitely a little bit of a new...
No, that's totally fine.
Venture for me. I think I read that they were just a little bit younger, and so...
You are correct. They are quick to mature, both physically and emotionally, and reach adulthood by the age of 10, and rarely live longer than 70 years.
Okay. So she's probably 13. I'll just cite a better, more specific age.
That's fine.
And I think shifters are also a little bit shorter in stature. Mm-hmm. And so she is similar to Ari. She's not muscular. She's not big or intimidating, but she definitely has a strength to her. You can see her muscles. And she steps in to help Ari. Do I share the spell that I would cast?
Yeah.
She would cast Thunder Wave to damage it and push it.
Okay. Now, how good is Shade at being careful in the way that she casts her spells? Thunder Wave is a general wave out from you. And so there's the potential here of accidentally flinging Ari against the wall with the dummy. How good is she? How meticulous is Shade? How good is she at being precise with that sort of thing?
Not very. It's why she's still in trading. Is in her mind, she's just thinking, leave him alone.
Okay, so all of a sudden the dummy just flies and smashes against the wall. But unfortunately, Ari is also thrown back and ends up on his butt, sprawled on the floor. And the overseer, who you know as Falco, Denith, laughs uproariously. You're gonna have to pay more attention than that. Ari, how do you feel in that moment? Are you happy to see the thing dealt with, or irritated that someone had to come to your rescue, irritated that someone came to your rescue in a slightly overdone manner?
Given the scene that just played out, Ari has a burning rage within him, but it's not at all directed at Shade. It is towards the overseer, laughing. Ari, if you're a part of Ari's pack, you're kin. And so he understands, presumably at this point, that sometimes that's going to happen with Shade, and you either take it or you leave it, and he chooses to take it.
And when Shade does that, sorry, no, go ahead.
He is very apologetic and immediately offers to help you up. And you know, it happened last time too, and she just is so sorry it happened again.
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
And when Shade does that, presumably her mark would flare into color. Where do we see Shade's mark? Is it somewhere that is open when she's dressed?
It depends on what she's wearing, I guess. So
that's also
not normally, right? No, she does not like it to be seen, and so it is typically covered. Okay. If in the fighting, her clothes shifted, it's exposed, and it is exposed. It's on her shoulder.
Mm-hmm. What color is her aberrant mark?
That's an excellent question.
You can think about it. And Eric, did you tell us what color Ari's is?
Ari's is pink.
It's pink. Okay.
This is a dumb question.
Yeah.
Can they be any color? Is there any significance of the color other than what I assign it significance?
The only significance is that true marks, like what Falco has displayed on his left cheek, are a sort of pale blue usually, but aberrant marks can appear in any shape and any color, but they don't usually appear in that color. So across the training room, we see another pair of combatants battling against these construct dummies, and they are faring a little bit better, particularly the powerfully built half-orc that we see. So, Colin, when we look at your character, what are we seeing?
At 19 years old, Wog stands tall for a half-orc. He is at about 6'5", comes in right around 240, just shy 250, and is embarrassingly capable. He stands in this training completely passive. He is faring well, but that is only because he is swatting away what was attacking Ari and was kind of batting him around, is just kind of bouncing off. There's a resiliency in physicality that doesn't exist in the spirit of Wog. No desire to be doing this. Much more interested in being outside, wanting to go be productive, wanting to make something. But the destruction that his mark allows prevents that. And so doing absolutely everything in his power to keep from participating. He's got his coarse hair on top, shorn sides pulled into a short ponytail because his mark takes up the right half of the side of his head, long on top, so that when he knows he's got control, which is rare, he is able to hide the mark by letting the hair down over the sides. It does glow orange when he finally has had enough of standing by and begins to use his mark with the pyrokinetic powers, and it has an orange glow rather than just a standard pulse. It has a heat in its color.
Okay. Awesome. And then just a little bit away from Wog, we see a Kalashtar. So, RA, tell us a little bit about what we see when we see Esri.
Esri looks a bit like if the Jolly Green Giant had a teenage son that was in a K-pop group. He has some vaguely green, slightly mottled skin, very symmetrical, angular features, kind of shoulder length, jet black hair combed over to one side, and is just sort of always kind of smiling bemusedly at the situation around him. He is with Wog. Is that what you said? Okay. Mostly he's just sort of blithely critiquing Wog's lack of commitment to this. Occasionally taking his short staff that has this sort of gnarled, well, and like a knot at the top of it, muttering a few incomprehensible words to turn that staff into something a little more appropriate for someone of his slender constitution, and giving the dummies a little magical whack. He also, assuming they're made of wood, to declare that, keeps sort of sending out conjuring some termites to, it's not quick work, exactly, but it is effective. And so whenever there's a little bit of moisture in the dummy, he'll sort of start causing mold, causing the rot to spread, to weaken it. But generally he just kind of stays back and lets the thing hit Wog, and just tries to help it destroy itself.
Okay, awesome. And as you're going, Falco watching says, "Oh yeah, that'll bring it down in about a week. What are you gonna do when you get into a mission, boy?" So, I'm gonna ask some questions of the characters. Who feels competitive with Wog? Wog is, while not enthusiastic, is still having an easy time in these drills, and one imagines that he probably has a fairly easy time in any of the physical training that takes place in this facility. Who feels competitive like that? That doesn't have to be hostile, but who feels the need to try and prove that they can match Wog in training?
I think Ari's frustration bleeds over into a competitiveness of like, if we were actually going against things that I could affect, then I'd be having just as easy a time as Wog. But you send wooden dummies against me, they ain't got a mind to affect. So Bob's your uncle. So it's more of a
Classic
frustration.
Eberron language.
Yes. So it's frustration at the circumstance, and that like these training scenarios are suited to fit somebody like Wog and allow somebody like him to excel, and so that Ari wants a chance to prove himself to be as capable as Wog.
Okay. Shade, What character, as you've gone through this training, which of these characters has impressed you?
I mean, they're also impressive in their own way. They're so good at what they do, or sometimes at what Ari doesn't do, but could if they had minds.
Outstanding. Okay. Wog, of your class, let's say, of your training pod, which character do you feel like you owe?
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. I don't know. I feel like I will know.
Mm-hmm.
But at this moment, I don't know. And that's because my only player interaction right now is with Esri pushing dummies towards me, which I'm just reluctantly having to set termite-infested dummies on fire. And I'm not exactly
Sometimes
happy about
waterlogged dummies.
Yeah, which is extra work, and that's just so selfish of you.
Okay, think about that as we go.
The fire is really against the point. Everything I'm doing,
defeating the dummies. I'm doing what we're supposed to do.
I have to work up some sort of fuel, biofuel. Maybe that'll help.
Esri, come up with a scenario in which you feel you let the others down during training at some point.
Well, I imagine in most training scenarios, he's a letdown. They don't let you train in the ways that he's as Ari is feeling. They don't really let him train in the ways that he's most effective. There was that time when the poison spray hit everyone, and that wasn't intentional. It was like a squid kind of gets threatened and it just kind of goes. But I apologized, and I healed up, and the way I heal up is sort of it's not exactly life. It's kind of like, well, okay, the spell's called false life, and that doesn't make anyone comfortable, but it's what I've got to work with, guys.
Awesome. So I want to go around and I want to ask why each of you joined this program. Now, you didn't necessarily have a choice. It's okay if you want to say you didn't have a choice in joining the program. But the program was started by the houses. And the houses get subjects for the Black Wheel program in a lot of different ways. In some cases, they have when aberrants are captured, aberrants are often guilty of a lot of crimes. Or at least when aberrants are in the vicinity of a violent or destructive crime, they are often discovered to be guilty. And so some of you, it may be you got arrested and this was the only option for you. It was this or jail. Some in the dragon marked houses are really interested in studying aberrants, and so some aberrants have just sort of disappeared off the streets into the hands of the houses, and so maybe you ended up that way. Maybe you volunteered because this was a way to use your mark openly, and at least in theory, in service of something greater. So I want to know why each of you joined the program. And I feel like I keep doing it, but I'm just going to keep doing it. Eric, why don't you go first?
Well, see, after my parents died, I was just kind of meandering. I'm pretty handy with a lute and a lyre, so I was able to get lodging at most inns for a night of entertaining patrons. But I got kind of tired of constantly being on the move, and this fella said that I could find 3 meals a day and steady stream of gold. All I had to do was sign on the dotted line, and I did. And next thing I know, I'm in Korth and working for the Dragon Marked Houses, which if I knew that that's the gig I was signing up for, I probably would have kept walking. But here I am.
Okay. Wog. Why did Wog join the...
Wog joined, having been from House Tharashk, being on the orc side of his family, was surrendered when the aberrant mark manifested itself, but didn't go unwillingly when it first started. The apathy that we see today is a slow evolution because having been cast out and felt without a tribe, he decided that he was going to earn his place in legend through great deeds, and being a part of the war sounded like the right way to do it. But this has just all been training, and this has all been fighting wooden dummies, and haven't gotten a chance to do any of the things that I should be doing to make myself lasting and great. And so my time feeling like I'm committed to the group, or to the organization rather than the group, is fading in a desire to prove myself to those that cast me out.
All right. RA, what about Esri?
You're muted.
It requires focus on the window to do the push to talk thing, which is what keeps tripping me up.
No problem.
Esri's a volunteer. He just didn't really have anywhere else to go, and this sort of alien forced desire to do something good. And when they tell you that you can use your abilities to help win the war, well, that sounds pretty good. At least it is something to move towards.
And Casey, how about Shade?
Well, Shade got arrested, and she was given this option, and this option seemed better than jail. So here she is.
That's fair. Did Shade do what she was arrested for?
I mean, she definitely did something, but whether or not it was as bad as the victim claimed.
Outstanding. So all of you, when you were brought into the program, those of you that came in any way willingly, at least, it was pitched as a somewhat high-minded thing. Is you're going to learn to use your power for good and in service to something greater than yourselves. Which of you believed that when you came in? You can just raise hands. Who believed that when you came in? And who believes it now? Is that belief still there in Esri and Wog?
Say, having not seen action, Esri doesn't know.
Okay.
Maybe?
Okay.
Not in Wog. The potential to still do good exists with those that I'm training with, but not the organization that's training me.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, when the morning happened, you all would have been informed about it. First of all, where is everyone from? This might be a relevant thing to know ahead of time. Ari, where is Ari from?
Well, Ari is a Korovar, not a half elf. He's not half anything. And in Eberron, half elves, some half elf cultures have developed this identity as Korovar. And it's all about community and togetherness. And so Ari grew up on the road. His family was part of a community that would travel around to more disenfranchised Korovar communities and help put on things like unity dinners, and then we would move on to the next town, country, wherever. So Ari grew up on the road.
Okay. And Wog?
Wog is from the Shadow Marches and saw adventure on the horizon through the entirety of his youth. Expeditions, great lore-worthy adventures, and then was, as I said, surrendered and was just picked up and removed one day.
Esri?
So, if you'll allow me, I'm going to flip the script on you a little bit because I don't know this world
That's fine.
all that well. So, where is Esri from?
Yes.
Where should Esri be from? I'll describe the living situation.
Yeah.
The Kalishtar are a sickeningly optimistic, fatalistic, but also just optimistic people. From my understanding, they are. So he grew up in a very tight community, not necessarily particularly open to outsiders. Very idyllic at the time, but when his mark manifested, he slowly became a polite pariah, or politely became a pariah in the group. He was not included in things. He was not spoken to, and so he was. They would never have outcast him explicitly, but it was made very clear that he was no longer part of this group.
So there are Kalishtar enclaves in a lot of big cities because, as you say, Kalishtar tend to be a very tight-knit community. And usually the only reason one wouldn't grow up within that community is if you are. So when Kalishtar interbreed with non-Kalishtar, the children born of such unions are kind of just have a coin flip of either being entirely Kalishtar or entirely the other species. So being born into the community, you're going, it would be fairly tight knit. So it's probably in one of the larger cities. So just for it being the one that has the most baggage to it and therefore has the most options for being interesting, we'll say that you were probably born in Sharn. Sharn is the largest city in Corvair. It's a vertical city. It's fantasy New York. And being kicked out on the streets of Sharn would be a very mean streets, David Copperfield kind of upbringing before you found your way into this program. Well, let me ask this, that being the case. So Ari grew up on the road, so no particular national identity. The Shadow Marches were never really involved in the war because they're out on the fringe, have always been out on the fringe of civilization and never really been a part of the central political structure. They were never part of the kingdom of Galifar that has fallen apart over the course of the war. But growing up in Brayland, you were growing up within one of the belligerent states. Does Esri have an opinion about the war? You don't necessarily have to fully develop it here because I know I'm asking you stuff you don't necessarily have a whole lot of backup for. But
I would say, as far as he knows, well, you may have to direct my comments on this, but he sort of has been taught that his side is the right side, and that it's that that is us, and then there is them,
right.
And we're the right ones, so obviously we should be winning.
Okay. And then Shade.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but the Elding Reaches
Yep.
is.
And however you pronounce it, that's how it's pronounced.
Canon.
Well, I want to say Elden Reaches, but there's 2 E's.
Yep.
So I feel obligated to put the long E there.
Mm-hmm.
Can I clarify or change my previous answer?
Yes.
You asked about whether or not she did the thing, and the way that I responded is not accurate to her. She absolutely did it. She was rightfully accused. She doesn't feel that it's just that she went to jail for it.
Mm-hmm. So being a shifter and an aberrant marked individual, Shade has kind of some double baggage going on in this world, because about 100 years ago, there was basically a werewolf apocalypse, as opposed to a zombie apocalypse, that led to a crusade led by the Church of the Silver Flame, that successfully defeated the very, very real apocalyptic threat of lycanthropes going crazy all over the world. But in many cases, particularly in Ondare, which the Elding Reaches used to be a part of, it went overboard in a lot of cases, and a lot of lycanthropes who weren't affected by the plague, and a lot of shifters. So does Shade feel, and we don't need to establish which is right, but does Shade feel that her being an aberrant or her being a shifter, that either of these things are the reason that she was in her view, over punished? Or does she just think it was your standard miscarriage of justice in any world with some corruption in it?
So many ways they led to this situation. It's her lack of control of her powers from her mark that harmed the person, that injured the person. And so she was not wrongfully accused, but definitely she feels targeted because of being, the outcast of an outcast group. And then also the mark is what's leading her to harm more people than she would normally feel the need to harm.
Mm-hmm. So when you heard about the morning a couple of years ago, the main context for you in training, for all of you in training, was one of the Black Wheel teams was in Khyber and was lost. I would like one of you to declare for me a member of that team that you all knew and felt the loss of. Whoever has an idea can just go.
We're going to roll for that? Or okay.
Nope.
This was when?
About 2 years ago.
Are we just making up a name, or?
Yeah.
Just tell me about the person. Tell me something about this person you knew.
I mean, I think an option would be there was an individual who was already in the program when we were all brought in that obviously regardless of the context that we were brought in, it was probably a big thing. And this person who was already well into their training kind of eased the transition, like was, for lack of a better term, an older sibling to all of us in some way, in context of the program, of making us feel a little bit more welcome and kind of settling down the nerves and walking us through what it was going to be like, because they had been there before.
Mhm.
And then obviously, because they were so far ahead in the training, they eventually got deployed.
Yeah.
Tommel.
Tommel. All right. Tommel. Okay. So yeah, so you lost Tommel, and that probably is something you felt very strongly. Do you think you felt anything else about the destruction of this nation? None of you are from Khyber. Khyber is, for Esri, at least one of the opponents of Breland in this horribly destructive war that's been going on for about a century now. For Shade, this war is what allowed the Eldeen Reaches to achieve independence. And of course, Ari doesn't have any particular national loyalties.
He doesn't have national loyalties,
Sure.
but because his family traveled so much and just the nature of core of our culture, Ari took it very hard because he knew a lot of Korovar that lived in Khyber. And in fact, there was, I mean, it's such a cliche, but there was a girl named Sarah that I always figured I'd find my way back to Metro one day. So Ari did take it hard because of the community that was lost and one individual person that he fondly recalls.
Okay. What was Wog's feeling? Did he have any, or is it just a place on a map that's not there anymore?
It's a place on a map that held great opportunity for adventure. There was lots to be done. There were lots of sides coming from a group of adventurers bordering on mercenaries. There was just some really cool stuff to get into the middle of. And it was just potentially the place to be, to see some action in all types of action. Not just drawn towards the idea of fighting, drawn towards that this is where the world was being reshaped.
Yeah. What about Esri? It's okay to say my character felt nothing about this. It's not, Am
I understanding correctly? This was a place on the other side.
Yeah, Khyber was on the other side of the war.
Well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I'm certainly glad we weren't there.
Yeah.
And maybe this wasn't the best idea. Right? People seem to be dying a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about the place, but better them than me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say probably the only element of it to Esri then that is perhaps tragic is there was a Brailish army deployed in Khyber at the time that was entirely obliterated and was being led by the king of Breland's daughter, who was also lost in the morning. And so there's a sort of national tragedy to it, but perhaps not personal, unless Esri had family in the army or something. But yeah, okay.
And it should probably be mentioned that there are some distinct difference of feeling between Esri and Esri's spirit. Esri is trying very hard not to care, but he's sort of forced to constantly, all the time, with the caring.
What about Shade?
As we've mentioned already, my unfamiliarity with this world. So please redirect my comments if they're off the mark. But this is a very unnatural event, right?
Oh, certainly, yes. No one has any idea what happened. There's a lot of speculation, but no one has claimed responsibility. No one knows what happened.
Shade, because of her upbringing, is drawn very much to fight or pursue the balance of the natural elements, and this destructive force that nobody knows what wielded it or what caused it. She doesn't have particular concern for the actual location itself, just the implications of what this means. What else is out there? What's causing it? Sort of shakes her into an question, does she need to pursue what's causing this?
Okay. So, a few minutes on in, and the dummies all go inert. And the door opens, and you're the sort of teacher, instructor here who has primary responsibility for you as a group. So you have students here, subjects, however you want to put it, recruits perhaps, are organized into teams that are supposed to work well together. They sort of evaluate personalities and powers and assign you in that way. And each team has a higher ranking member of the program, not an actual marked individual, but a member from one of the houses overseeing them. Yours is a person named Soren Dimadani. The door in the back of the room opens and Soren walks in. This is strange. Soren's not usually here for combat training, and you know that combat training hasn't been going on for nearly long enough for the session to be over. And he says, that will be all for now, Falco. We need to have a talk with our students. And we will pause our scene there and give everyone a little bit of a break and come back in just a few minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed this, those of you watching. And if not, please, I'm sorry, I guess. I mean, you stuck around till the end, so
Feel free to still leave a like, though.
yeah, that would be
Somebody
great.
else might, it can't hurt.
Yeah, feel free to like and subscribe. And Eric will tell you
Gosh,
now
we're doing this, huh?
where we can be found on social media.
Ring that bell.
Yeah, we are on Twitter and Instagram at the Geek Pantheon, and we have a Discord that you can find on our website, thegeekpantheon.com, and we have a Facebook group, the Geek Pantheon, if you just search that. Additionally, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. If you enjoy what we do on this channel and would like to support it and help it grow, then that would be pretty neat. And yeah, I think I hit all of them. Yeah. We also do have a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/thegeekpantheon. I stream every Tuesday and Sunday at 8 p.m. Central and Saturdays at 7 a.m. Central.
And if you really enjoyed looking at Colin's face, you can also find Colin on Twitch at SorryBTR.
Twitch.tv/SorryBTR. Twitter.com/SorryBTR. The O is a 0.
All right. We will hope to see you next time.